Hey guys, David the Fishing Pastor here for Cast King and BassResource.com, and today we're going to be talking about pitching for bass. So normally you hear people talking about flipping and pitching. Today I'm really just going to be focusing on the pitching side of that. Now, pitching is a technique that I believe everyone should know in order to be a successful bass angler. Learning how to pitch in bass fishing has so many benefits to it. One of the greatest benefits I'd say is being able to make a stealthy, quiet cast to a specific target. Now, also, if you're a bank fisherman like I mostly am, sometimes you find yourself in some really tight spots where you just cannot make a cast. This is where pitching really comes in handy to make those targeted casts underneath a lot of trees, things like that. It's just going to really help you get on more bass. Also, if you're on a boat or a kayak and you're trying to cover some water, it's easy to really pitch out there and bring back your lure and cover a lot of water in a short amount of time with short distances. It also helps you, again, be stealthy and quiet so you're not scaring off fish with loud casts. So we're going to talk about the technique of pitching, and we're also going to talk about the gear that is best suited for this technique. So when it comes to pitching itself, basically what you're doing is you're using the momentum of your lure as it falls and your wrist to make that cast. Now it's this kind of wonderful cooperation between the lure, between your wrist and your thumb as you feather. Now, like I said, it's really important that you feather with your thumb, because if you let it go and you raise your rod tip and you don't release with your thumb, you're going to hold that line, you're just going to it's just going to plop back down, and that's not going to work. So you're determining with your thumb how much line is coming out, how quickly it comes out or how slowly it comes out, and that's going to help determine whether that lure is going to fall softly and quietly in the water as well. So pretty much what it is you're letting the lure fall. And if you do hold the lure, if you decide to start off your pitches this way, which you can, and this is the way I like to do it, you can hold it higher or lower. I've seen people do it different ways, and as you practice, as you do it, you're going to find kind of what works for you. But I noticed that if it's higher, usually, then it tends to, like I said, lob a little bit. So I'd recommend holding a little bit lower, a little bit kind of closer to your reel, not right on the reel, not super close, but a little bit closer. But again, you find what's comfortable for you. And then, like I said, everyone has their own techniques, their own styles. I actually like to turn the reel towards me, and so it's kind of a sideways, and then again I'm feathering the entire time. Now, some other things that are really important to know when pitching is you're using your wrist, like I said, getting comfortable using your wrist with your rod and reel, but just practicing even just that is really important. And it's one thing that I've done and I still do is I like to actually practice pitching at home. And I'll just tie on a weight or something, I don't want any hooks or anything going around my house or in my yard or wherever. But just tying on a weight and then just practicing different strengths, and then also practice targeting. You put a cup or you put some type of target, whatever you want, and then you practice the accuracy of your cast. Let's talk about the gear that I would recommend for pitching. So starting off with the rod, I'd recommend anything from a medium heavy and up. So medium heavy, heavy, extra heavy, and that really depends on kind of where you're throwing your lures, the type of cover you have, and you know that based off of where you fish. Now, my go-to rod for pitching is my Cast King Royale Legend rod. Now, this is a heavy, fast action rod. It's a 7'3", and I'd recommend something a little bit longer. I know some guys like to go 7'11" and 8 foot and things like that. I'm a little bit on the shorter side, so I don't like super long rods. So 7'3", 7'4" works for me. And again, a fast action rod, so that really means that it has more tip than anything else. The bend is more at the end of the rod, and that tip has a lot of sensitivity. So if I'm fishing, say, a jig, or I'm fishing a Texas rig, I really want to have that sensitivity on there. So a fast action rod is kind of the best thing for me that I've seen. Moderate action rods are better for cranking, things like that. You want more of that more parabolic bend. But when it comes to pitching, you want that good fast tip. And again, sort of longer rod and anything medium heavy and above. Now when it comes to the reel, I'd really highly recommend a faster reel. You don't want to have to find yourself as you're pitching having to make more turns on that reel to try to catch up to the fish. What you want is to be able to quickly reel down and then set that hook on the fish. So what I'm using is my Cast King Speed Demon. Now, this is an incredibly fast reel, but I'd recommend anything from a 7-gear ratio and above for pitching. I really wouldn't go any lower than that. Otherwise you'll find yourself trying to catch up to that fish. But this is a 9:3-to-1 gear ratio reel, so I don't have to turn this handle very many times to catch up to that fish. So I'd really recommend going with a faster reel and something with a lot of power like this Speed Demon. So the last piece of gear that I'd recommend when it comes to pitching is using either a no stretch or low stretch line. Most of my reels have braided line, and that's really what I'd recommend, especially if you're pitching into some heavier stuff. It just cuts through that easier, and they're low diameter lines, so you don't really have to worry about them being super thick or super heavy. But even if they are a heavier pound test, this is 65-pound braid, right? This is a heavy line, but it has a small diameter. And if I don't need this, if I don't need all the power of this line, then I can just tie on a leader. So today I actually have a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader tied on, because I don't need all the power of 65-pound braid, but it is more sensitive, and again, it does have either no stretch or low stretch, so you're able to set that hook on the fish even harder. I really hope that this tutorial helps you. Just remember just to practice your technique, and the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. And once you actually get out on the water, then you're more comfortable with it, and you'll find yourself hooking up on more bass. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in any of the gear that was mentioned in this video, it will be linked in the description below. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and as always, to pray, fish, repeat. God bless. I'll see you in my next video.